What's poppin' people, it's your boy Zero, aka Black Natsuki Subaru do thing, and we are here with another web novel reading for ReZero Arc 9. This is chapter 40, Flash Remnade. You guys already know what to do by this point. Leave a like, share this with your homies, subscribe. Hit that notification bell as well so you can stay updated on when I make videos, content go live, and all that good crazy shit. Man, I'm bricked up. You're bricked up. Let's be bricked up in a duo queue as we read some peak. Now I'm trying to get this shit out because I do not want to be spoiled for fucking everything. So here, let me turn this down a little bit. That's a little bit loud. A little bit loud. Okay. All right, so let's see. That was when the imaginary Subaru voiced his opinion, while they were in the midst of planning a surprise attack. With his arms and legs crossed as he sat in midair, Subaru's stern face caused Petra to recall the events inside Subaru's memories, in the royal capital where Al and Rem had crossed paths. That was when Subaru made a major blunder at the castle and was desperately trying to make up for it. Although Petra did not feel that Subaru's reckless behavior back then was quite bad, she did not feel completely disillusioned towards him. However, Subaru himself remembered it was an utterly humiliating experience that made him squirm just thinking about it. In fact, everyone who was there must have looked down on Subaru's reckless behavior, so the only person who would not feel disillusioned by his actions, if Petra were excluded, would be Rem, who had been blindly devoted to him as far back as then. Be that as it may, Subaru, unable to escape the cycle of negative emotions, had visited Priscilla's mansion in search of a way to save Amelia, who was being attacked by the witch cult. There, Subaru received an incredibly harsh and cold response from Priscilla, but the crucial connection between Al and Rem was revealed right there as he was being expelled from the mansion. He did not know the specific reason, however. Al mistakenly called Rem by Ram's name and was extremely shocked by that fact. When I asked Rem about it, she said she had never met him before. So, Al-san knew about the two of them beforehand? Perhaps he researched the rival camps for the royal selection or something like that. So you're saying Al could have been in charge of the Priscilla camp's countermeasures against the other royal selection camps? I don't think that's impossible, but it doesn't really matter. The important thing is that Al knew Rem. In other words, just like with all of us, when Al-san sees Remne-sama, his memories should get all mixed up. Exactly. I would call it a flash remnade. With a silent snap of his fingers, Subaru winked, and Petra gave him a thumbs up. To be honest, Petra was reluctant to treat Rem like a flash grenade, but she and the others had already confirmed that there was no way to counteract the effects of memories returning. As seen with Petra and the Subaru within her, and Ram, the deeper the relationship and attachment, the greater the impact, but even the slightest opening was still an opening. All that was left was to take advantage of that opening. Let's see, let's show Al-san just how angry we are. Let us here give an explanation for the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, Roy Althar. His nature, bearing the disposition of bizarre eating, wielding the birther of myriad of tragedies, the authority of gluttony, Roy had completely incapacitated Otto Sulam, tormentor of the Aldebaran party. His eclipsing had not only incapacitated Otto, but chewed and digested his 22-year-old walk of life, assimilating his joys, his angers, his sorrows, the accumulation of all that which was his, into a heterogeneous blend, which was eaten up in one breath from atop the platter. Wringing his throat, upon finishing the incorporeal meal, Roy tasted the life of Otto Suwon, commanding a greater precision and degree of freshness than a deep read of a Book of the Dead, tasting an adequate breadth of alternating joys and sorrows for it, having overcome trials and tribulations, with somewhat rich seasoning and flavor. He bestowed to it an evaluation of 2 stars. By evaluating what was eaten this way, it felt as though he had fallen heir to the spirit of the gourmand belonging to his sibling, who had already lost his life, lie batten Katos. But, setting that aside, to eat one's memories meant it was possible to know that being's way of thinking and philosophy to its extreme, while in the midst of battle, even learn the order of things that were planned, what had been schemed and plotted. Therefore, originally, despite the aftertaste of triumph and sense of accomplishments felt after Otto's defeat, sensing the ambush planned for the subsequent instant should have been a simple and spontaneous task to accomplish. However, it did not transpire so, because Otto had not shared plans with his comrades, but what tangible actions they would take after he had been incapacitated. Merely, Otto Suwon had solemnly believed, should it just extend a signal for a moment, he would comprehensively be incapacitated. His comrades would not let it go to waste, because he, devoid of plans or anything such, bet everything on just powerful bonds. Oh, that's so awesome. It's a pleasure to meet you, Aldebaran-sama. Unmistakably, it had happened in the blink of an eye. A closing and opening of the eyes, at the presence of the blue-haired girl who had interloped in that instant. While a matter of course for Aldebaran, neither Ye nor Roy, nor even Aldebaran could react. An outsider who was not supposed to be there had suddenly appeared without warning. That alone was enough to pry an instant from veteran soldiers. But in this scene, the one onto which that had been most lethal was Aldebaran, for whom it did not end with a mere instant. Ye naturally had no acquaintance with her. Roy was exempt due to being his own authority, and Aldebaran, while sharing in his memories, possessed a fundamentally different soul. Thus, it was a phenomenon that did not occur for any of them, stimulating the black-stained memories etched into his soul, alongside the sensation of something that had been removed from being forced back into his brain. Aldebaran's consciousness went white. Regardless of who had defied it as such, it was a flash grenade of memories. Al-sama! A shrill, frantic voice called to him, and hands that reached out from beyond the white-stained vision grabbed hold of him. However, that did not save Aldebaran from his predicament. The legs that ought to have been firmly planted on the ground hurled through the air, and as Aldebaran basked in a ferocious wind, he lost his sense of up, down, left, right, and realized his body had begun revolving. Unable to control his body, still lording overhead, was the blue sky wherein shone the glaring sun. As that radiance scorched his black eyes, Aldebaran realized something. Through some means, he had been teleported straight into the sky, thrown outside of his territory. Expand territory! Matrix redefinition! Re-establishing the territory that had been forcibly severed, Aldebaran grit his teeth. Forced to go along with the opponent's plan, he had been driven to update his matrix. No longer could he return to before the surprise attack a moment prior. But if he had lagged behind in his decision to update it, Aldebaran would have been defeated with nothing he could do in return. Aldebaran's authority was invincible, but that was entirely within the set bounds of his established territory. Were he to perish outside of those bounds, he would be the same as the many lives who were not afforded any second chances. See, I partially knew that that was going to be the case. Like, he had to be within his domain to be able to, like, return by death. Despite the circumstances he had been placed in, Aldebaran's consciousness concentrated on reality. Given that he had been forced to update his matrix, to Aldebaran, everything from here on would be both a treasure and a calamity, a tailwind and a headache, a virtue and an evil. Sky! The roaring hum of the wind, the violent sense of suspension that seemed to strike his body, the fact that he was falling from such a high altitude, despite having no memory of being sent up there, meant that the due procedures had been omitted. For a moment, what flashed through Aldebaran's mind was the authority of the strongest witch, but that could not be it. If the opponent had truly been that witch, the phenomenon that occurred would have deferred. He would not have been thrown into the open air like this, and above all, Aldebaran would have been killed 100 times over before he could even blink. Hence, he could not eliminate the possibility from the multitude of worst-case scenarios. As he narrowed down the possibilities, he gathered his surrounding situation in parallel. At present, if there were any irregularities nearby Aldebaran, as he was being jostled by the wind, that would be Al-sama, tightly grabbing onto Aldebaran's single arm and clinging it was Ye. Just before he had been thrown into the sky, she had pounced on Aldebaran just as he had frozen up from having eaten the flashbang of memories, and thus had been sent up from the forest to the sky along with him. Whether he ought to count that as a blessing or a curse, Aldebaran mentally spared things he could and could not do now that Ye was here, and decided on the first action to take. That was, "I'll steady your posture. Al-sama, don't part from me." Simultaneous to Ye embracing him and attempting to form some sort of countermeasure against falling, Aldebaran unwrapped the drug packet within his mouth and gulped down the poison. He could tell that Ye had widened her crimson eyes and was looking at him with an expression of surprise, but given that he had already ended up taking a lethal dose, there was no helping it. "I'll ask later." Blood frothed at the corners of his mouth, and tasting rusted irons as that mercilessly defiled the inside of his helmet. Aldebaran's consciousness was crushed by the wind. It was something he had known would happen, but reality seemed to follow up by greeting him with a howling wind. When he opened and shut his eyelids, ever present, there was an odious radiance of the sun. As it glared down at him intent, Aldebaran grasped that he was surrounded by several hundreds of meters of sky. "You've got to be kidding me." Warping instantaneous travel, teleport. No matter how one chose to express it, the result was the same. In the sense of manipulating physical space, that which fell in the realm of yin magic was a hyperspell that necessitated all sorts of conditions to be met. If one carefully constructed the technique and erected a field wherein it was etched, it would be possible to create a limited warp connection by 2 doors through that field. Or probably even without advancing preparations, if a caster could simply visualize the coordinates of a destination and constructed the technique to send their target there with the preparedness to fully expend their own gate, they might have been able to issue just a one-way ticket. Ultimately, the phenomenon that had sent Aldebaran and Ye into the sky was at an impossible level of difficulty, even if technically achievable through magic, which meant that some other form of foul play was involved. Not once had he gotten word of a divine protection that could physically interfere with others to such an extent. Of course, like in the case of Reinhardt, divine protections though to be trivial, could be implemented in an unusual way. And there were also those who would end up tailoring them into dreadful weapons of war. But this is different. But if it's an authority? As far as Aldebaran knew, the existing authorities of wrath, gluttony, and lust belonged to the Sin Archbishops, while sloth and greed were both in possession of Natsuki Subaru. Excluding Aldebaran's authority, which ought to be classified as all manners of enumerated supremacy, or wait, supernumerary and inappropriated. Inappropriated. The leftover possibilities were pride, as well as vainglory and tristitian. The last two were supposed to be unusable by anyone, so the only candidate remaining was pride. Pride has come, sprung up, gotten involved? Nah, that ain't what matters here. Be it someone Aldebaran knew who had been chosen as pride, or be it as someone he did not know who had gotten involved as pride, that which he ought to focus on was the possibility that he had made an enemy of an authority holder. Save for Natsuki Subaru and Reinhardt, the only variables that could pose a threat to Aldebaran were unmistakably those who held authorities, none other than those destroyers of concepts, permitted to bend the very rules of the world, trampling upon them as they please. All right, settled in. Are you finally done panicking after being forced to go along with your enemy's plans? Feeling as if he had heard those words voiced by the roaring wind, Aldebaran gave his reply. In order to be able to do so, Aldebaran had snorted out the situation in his head. Of course, the actual circumstances of being thrown into the sky, the regret he had about Ye having come along with him, and the sensation of his consciousness being whittled out by the resurgence of memories. In reality, none of that had changed. But that was a cheap price to pay if he did not die for real. Such was Aldebaran's life. In exchange for that dirt cheap price, he could easily afford to let his head, body, and mind take a breather. Al-sama! Ye grabbed onto Aldebaran's single arm, and seeing her tied up, hair violently fluttering like a dog's tail in good spirits, Aldebaran advanced his thoughts onto the next phase. With both him and Ye alive, they would need to land on the ground. For that purpose, I'll steady your posture, Al-sama. Don't part from me. Nah, that's my line. As Ye enthusiastically tried to initiate her own measures for being thrown into the sky, Aldebaran hindered her by forcibly pulling her into his own chest. Because he had used his right arm to do so, he rapidly forged the usual stone prosthetic arm and rose it aloft. That instant, a vehement impact struck his prosthetic arm from above, adding speed to their freefall. Heavily reverberating across the artificial arm was a blow from a dreadful and fiendish lump of iron. Mixing in with the tremendous voice of the wind, it was a threat present at the end of the clanging chains. Oh my god, dancing like a writhing snake. Contrary to its name, it was a spiked iron ball from the form molded to send people into an eternal sleep. Prepare yourselves! On the opposite side of the iron ball that smashed into him, descending was a blue-haired girl who appeared to carry the sun on her back. Having greatly diminished Aldebaran's advantage, the opponent, who had shot up the signal for the countermeasure, or the commencement of the battle, Rem bellowed. Slowly protruding from her forehead was a single horn, and it was a sign that she was of the Oni clan, proof that she was a member of the race created to decisively purge the world of all traces of the witch. What? That's what the Oni clan was meant to do? What? But even more than that, now that he had recalled her existence, it took on a different significance to Aldebaran. That was, to begin with, you're not even supposed to be alive, Lil Miss Rem. Leaping into the air with hardened resolve, the hem of her maid uniform fluttering behind her, Rem gripped the handle of the Morning Star tightly in her hand as she glared down at Al and his maid below. Up until this point, the surprise attack had gone perfectly according to plan. By exposing Al to the sight of Rem, they robbed him of his ability to make decisions, rendering him frozen. And in that instant, they utilized compression in order to abduct him. This not only separated Al from his allies, but also trapping him in a position where he was prevented from moving right away, allowing for him to be successfully dragged out into the sky, a matter of which everyone had readily agreed. When it came to the crucial timing of the aforementioned attack, Otto, who had been pursuing the Al troop while engaging them in guerrilla warfare, had prepared a message to be delivered in the event that he was defeated, a precaution that proved invaluable. The signal marked the defeat of the formidable Otto at the hands of the Al troop, and thus was tantamount to the moment in which their tension would ease, even if only slightly. Priscilla-san. Oh, Priscilla-san was one who showed me utmost kindness. As someone who cared deeply for that Priscilla-san, I cannot stand by and overlook Al-san's outrageous actions any longer. When objections had been raised about Rem going to confront Al directly, Rem had chosen those words in order to express her own wishes. Ultimately, while that was merely a manner of the mindset that formed the foundation of her resolve, it was undoubtedly a display of Rem's true feelings and the core of her unwavering motivation in facing this battle. Of course, right beside the core was the presence of Subaru, who had been captured by Al. Rather, he might have actually been the core. No, Priscilla-san was the core of it all, so there would just need to be two cores. She would have to apologize to Beatrice-sama later. In any case, that determination of hers settled the matter of Rem's participation in the unit that would confront Al head-on. Strategically speaking, there was no particular vision of Rem being particularly useful on any of the battlefronts. But even aside from that initial disruption of memories, there was more than enough of a possibility for Rem to be super effective against Al. The specifics of that possibility were precisely: to begin with, you're not even supposed to be alive, Lil Miss Rem. The moment the iron ball smashed down from the high skies, Al blocked the firm impact with his prosthetic arm, forged of rock, shouting angrily as he caught sight of Rem. Despite being buffeted by the roaring winds, Rem heard those words with clarity, thus convincing her that of that which Petra had told her about the possible relationship between Rem and Al that she was not aware of. Although Rem can't remember any such interactions between Al-san and her incompetent self. She had also checked with Ram, but it seemed that only her contact with Al was limited to one time in the royal capital before the royal selection officially began. It seemed they had not had a conversation memorable enough to leave an impression, and even what they had talked about remained ambiguous. Likely, the point of contact between the sisters and Al was one-sided, perceived only by the other party. But that manner of speaking is truly hurtful. When we were attacked by Arakia-san and Girl, when we were attacked by Arakia-san and Girl, the ones who had saved us were you, Al-san, and... Pausing there, however, Rem firmly swallowed all her hesitation and... Priscilla-san! Is that not right? Deliberately bringing up Priscilla's name, Rem had attempted to agitate Al. For resorting to the worst, most underhanded tactic she could think of, Rem despised herself. However, thinking it necessary in order to put a stop to Ao's outrageous behavior, she steeled her body and heart as an Oni and fixed her stern gaze on him. In response to Rem's provocation, Ao did not raise his voice, instead choosing to maintain silence. Within his jet black iron helmet, Ao's expression remained hidden behind his visor. The light dwelling in his eyes was unknown. Even the amount of pain Rem's words just now had inflicted upon him, everything remained unknown to him. Here it comes! However, Rem did not wait for Ao's reaction, resuming her onslaught without granting him any time to rest. Rem had already set her priorities. From the beginning, when compared to Ram, who displayed talent and genius cut above the rest of all other beings in this world, Rem was clumsy, mediocre, and inferior in every way. Here it comes. The inferiority complex. If Rem desired something beyond the reach of an average person, then she would just have to carefully select the best possible means for that end. For the time being, Rem excelled at ignoring lower priorities in order to focus on her higher ones. Huma! Alongside that, the incantation, mana interfered with the world, invoking the unreal phenomena known as magic. Unlike Amelia's Huma, which manipulated heat and condensed moisture in the atmosphere to create ice, Rem specialized in the type of Huma that created water from nothing using magic, outputting that water as materialized ice from the outset. Neither Huma was necessarily superior to the other, but the Amelia type Huma, which utilized the moisture in the air, required less mana and possessed the advantage of remaining in place after serving its purpose, allowing for it to be reused. On the other hand, the Rem type Huma required more mana because it created water from nothing, and after being used, it would return mana and leave no trace. Okay. Based on that explanation alone, the Amelia type Huma might seem to have the overwhelming superiority. However, the Rem type Huma had its own powerful advantages. This is due to the fact that it could not create ice at any desired location and in any desired shape, regardless of the amount of moisture in the air or the quality of the water. Ha! Kicking off the ice platform she had created in midair, Rem ferociously lunged toward Ao and his companion. By manifesting a Huma that was anchored in place, Rem created an impromptu platform capable of withstanding even her full-powered kicks. The power of the Morning Star, unleashed after gaining a momentary boost from the platform, was beyond comparison to that which only utilized the force generated by gyrating her body. The iron ball spun violently as it hurled toward Ao, sparing no quarter. Capable of easily crushing a human body upon direct impact, it was as if it was responding to the affection Subaru had shown by polishing it every day. Closing in toward Ao from Rem's hand with delight, closer and closer and closer. As if I'd let you. At that moment of impact, the loving iron ball was halted by countless threads. Upon closer inspection, that was the work of the Crimson Shinobi held in Ao's arms. Twisting her body to glare at Rem, she was a thread user without peer, subservient to Ao. The Shinobi embraced from behind by Ao, weaved the threads she had extended from both hands into a net, to softly catch the iron ball like a cushion. Her skills were impressive, but that was not what caught Rem's attention. In the first place, the plan behind the surprise attack was to completely isolate Ao from his allies by throwing him out into the sky. For her to have intervened there, something was wrong here. Something was wrong with her. No, it was mistaken to think that there was something wrong with her. Rem was well aware of why she had been able to do it. Despite everyone else having been completely stunned by Rem's sudden appearance, the Shinobi retained enough leeway for herself to reach her hands out and channel it into practical action. As for what had allowed her to do so, that would be love. Wrong! You're wrong! In response to Rem's confident outcry, Al and the shinobi shouted back almost simultaneously. Taking advantage of that opening, Rem forcefully pulled back the Morning Star that was about to be taken from her and retrieved the iron ball from the shinobi, who was reluctant to lose her balance. In preparation for her next attack, Rem created multiple new footholds, shot herself off of them, and rapidly descended in pursuit of the two. However, it's scary when someone catches up to you, but when you're stretched too far, even a lead can become a shortcoming, you know? As composure returned to the previously tense expression of the shinobi, she flashed a sweet smile as she shot out a thread. And the target of that thread had been the foothold of that ice that Rem had created midair. Having been suddenly thrown out into the sky, Al and his shinobi had no choice but to enter a freefall. But by anchoring onto the footholds created by Rem, they'd be able to stabilize themselves. From what she had heard, the shinobi's skills far exceeded Rem's own. If the opponent were able to compensate for the disadvantage she had been given, the gap in strength that ought to have been somewhat close would reopen in no time. Indeed, of this I am aware. I am full of shortcomings after all. That was why Rem would not allow her opponent to compensate for her disadvantages. Hearing Rem's reply, feeling the sensation she had just grasped vanishing like mist, the shinobi's expression once again lost its composure. Huh? The foothold of ice she had attempted to use as an anchor point vanished as if it were a dream of an illusion. Oh, okay, yeah, she's calling it back. Of course, neither was it a dream nor an illusion. It was mana. Rem had simply returned to being mana at will. Despite both being Huma, this was the main difference between Amelia's type, which once frozen, stayed frozen, and the Rem type, once frozen, only when desired, and was easy to tidy up. Okay? Simply put, Rem's version is more offensive. How much more we got? Oh, okay, now then. Wait, how far did I go? Oh, okay, here we go. Okay. Right before Rem's eyes, the shinobi lost the target upon which she was exerting strength, thus breaking her stance. Holding onto the shinobi, Al was caught up in that as well. Almost losing his balance, but he managed to reinforce the exterior of his cracked prosthetic arm, consecutively blocking a flurry of iron ball attacks unleashed by Rem. 2, 3 times. Thereupon, Yah! Rising obliquely toward or upward from below, Amelia's long leg mercilessly slammed into Al's defenseless back with toes and arms and a boot of ice. The division of the Al troop. Sorry about that, guys. Amongst a group rebelling against the world to an extent that rivaled the witch cult, even surpassing it in terms of instantaneous velocity. That was a prerequisite That was the prerequisite they could absolutely not afford to mess up. The surprise tactic performed in order to meet that condition had gone about 90% as planned, then 10% miscalculation. Somehow, how the presence of the shinobi who had chosen to go alongside with them would come into play was something that wounded the plan as an uncertain variable. But overly worrying about it would just be all the more harmful. Sorry, I'm getting like a little sleepy. I'm gonna like take a break after this because like I actually didn't end up taking a break after the last one. I just got some water, ate some food, and then just like kept reading. Man, this shit's so fucking good. Let me see. Let me redo that. The surprise tactic performed in order to meet that condition had gone about 90% as planned. The 10% miscalculation, how the presence of the shinobi who had chosen to go alongside with them would come into play, was something that wounded the plan as an uncertain variable. But overly worrying about it would just be all the more harmful. Each of them would fulfill their own part to the utmost. After all, without that sort of faith and resolve, the stratagem to stop the Aldebaran troop would not bear any fruit. Truly, everyone's got the sort of look in their eyes that one can't help but tremble, you know? Pronouncing so whilst dangling his languidity. Oh, is that Roy? Hanging arms to and fro, the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, Roy Alfar, exhibited a sadistic smile as he surveyed his surroundings. In his environment, environs. In his environs were shadows that appeared in succession as though substituting Aldebaran and the others immediately after they were hurled. Stood there were warriors assembled to fight the Aldebaran troop. All of them cast gaze that stood their ground against the Sin Archbishop, to which Roy unwittingly licked his lips. How nice, so nice, perhaps it is nice, but you know, to gather in such large numbers, the combat power required for taking care of us might get rounded up all together in one fell swoop, isn't it? Ha! Likewise for you, how about showing more lovableness by cowering in fright a bit more? That is, if you do not wish to meet death the same way as your sibling, who perished at the Tower of Sand. That couldn't have been me. On top of that, oh, is that Petra? On top of that, do you people even have witch beast chans in your strike zone? If not the, you can thank me. Wait, you can think of me. Wait, what? If not, then you can think of me as your people's natural enemy. Amidst the warriors, right, she can call it mobbies to like fuck them up. I'm pretty sure they're also addicted to the smell of gluttony, the miasma. Amidst the warriors, the shadow clinging to her own elbows and shadow coming down, 3-strand braid resided so. Okay. Even in the face of their unmistakable hostility, Roy was able to conceal a smile trembling in free motion of the banquet. This is a joke. Can't you see the divine dragons here? You know how much danger, or how much damage it would do to the royal capital? There's no chance you can win this. Contrary to the elated Roy, Heinkel's voice trembled with a face deathly pale. As per his words, he stood right by the feet of the divine dragon while relying on its intimidation. And in response to that hostility that stared him down, he fervently raised his voice with a loathsome expression. To figure out to have been called a man who borrowed the might of dragons. But Heinkel's point was in fact not mistaken. The divine dragon possessed absolute power. If one were to stand in its way without a plan, what awaited them was a curtain's close of merciless annihilation. Though, that's only if you ain't got a plan. Old giant! The old giant seen the demi-human war. Never again will I give mercy to those bearing their fangs against me, until I have you return filth. But I'll be having you return filth. Before Heinkel and his breathing choked up and averted his gaze, the giant stroked his bald head and declared such. At the giant's proclamation, Heinkel's cheeks tensed up, but there was another figure that began to stir, and that was none other than the dragon he had singled out earlier. I don't know if I should be saying this, but it makes me damn nervous that we've been punished to this extent. I'm keenly feeling what I mean to make an enemy out of this world. What? I'm keenly feeling what it means to make. Oh, okay. Despite being a dragon of such dignified appearance, it placed its hand on the back. It placed its hand on his head with a strangely human-like gesture, while giving off a sense of presence such that the majority of who lived in the Dragon Kingdom would prostrate themselves just by laying eyes on it. The way it conducted itself made it seem like an entirely different thing. At the very least, in the eyes of those who knew the real Divine Dragon, the sense of something being amiss was palpable. But then again, unlike the dignitaries of the kingdom, I'm in no such panic about the image of the Divine Dragon crumbling, or of its brand value plummeting. Only, I wonder if the next one to me. Will you have quite a few reservations? No, Master. You needn't worry. Oh, wait. Oh shit, this is Roz. Oh, I'm like, oh wow. Hold on, chat. We're about to get through it. Now I'm gonna take me a nap. Now I'm gonna get up and then we're gonna read more. Sheesh. No, Master. You needn't worry. Groundless fear. It would be laughable for me to pile words onto a past that I have already shed. Feeble. Looking down on those who showed no fear before the dragon husk, that did not align with its own mind or stature, Aldebaran narrowed its golden eyes. Among those standing in their way, attention began to converge on a small silhouette slowly stepping forward. Naturally, Roy and Heinkel also shifted their attention to that silhouette. It was unclear how that individual had come to stand in that position, but strangely enough, they understood without the need for words to tell them. That girl represented the will of everyone present. At the center of everyone's attention, the girl, Petra Lete, thrust her finger up towards the heavens and spoke. It's an all-out war! Be dolls or let yourself go get thoroughly defeated, alright? So she declared. The entire squad pull up, let's go! Yes, Rem fighting, we love to see it! Dude. Is this like rage bait? Like, the fuck? This is rage bait. Anyway. So, I know that was like a little bit rough. I was kind of dozing a bit, and it's not because this shit's not good. I'm just tired. I probably just have a little bit of the itis. We're gonna go into the beginning of Chapter 41, Appraise the Usurper. If you guys were enjoying the reading so far, leave a like and let me know if you guys are, having a good time. This is some beautiful art, by the way. Beautiful art. And I will only read one passage. It's an all-out war. Be dolls or let yourselves get thoroughly defeated, alright? Indeed, the moment Petra issued her declaration in the mountains, from which Al had disappeared, palpable tension immediately began to swell, and then burst asunder. That instant, the residual members of the Owl Troop, who had been on guard from the sudden appearance of Petra and the rest, the Divine Dragon, Roy, Alfard, and Glutton, and Heinkel all sprang into motion. However, there existed not a shred of coordination between the three, with each of them acting independently. Upon witnessing them all begin to move, Petra's first stratagem, the first stratagem had been the flash remnade. That's such a fucking funny word. Had been the flash remnade, prying away Aldebaran's consciousness using the presence of Rem, so this stratagem would serve as the second arrow. It was a stratagem to cause the Owl Troop composed of individuals who were each formidable opponents to break apart into a disorderly crowd. Taking Aosan out of the picture right at the onset, and then utterly disorienting the remaining combatants, with that, with a ready, go, everyone will start acting on their own. Oh, that was Subaru. With a ready, go, everyone will start acting on their own. As the imaginary Subaru's voice completed Petra's sentence, the dragon, the Sin Archbishop, and Heinkel all conformed to their own individual senses of judgment. In order to disarray their options as much as possible, they mobilized the bulk of their forces right at the outset. Of course, this stratagem also came with a large risk that the Divine Dragon would dispose of all of them in one fell swoop, but likely, the method Aosan used to enlist the Divine Dragon was the same one used for me. This has been your boy Zero, aka Black Noski Siru. I'm about to take a nap, then we about to keep reading. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one. Until next time, peace. It's peak.